Hey, beloved, how are you? I am doing well. I hope you're doing well. I am trying to get my foot up. Drove my car for the first time today. For those that may not know, I had surgery, had a nerve, 3 to 4 inch nerve, and swollen taken out of my foot. But I'm getting better every day. Drove my car for the first time in 3 weeks, and it's a stick. So yeah. Anyway, but it's all good. I hope you're blessed. This is just gonna be a great night. I already know it. It's gonna be a great night. Welcome to the Urban Apologetics channel. We're gonna get into some stuff tonight. It is Black History Month, man, and I am always excited about Black History Month, right? It is just, a time to learn, a time to reflect on things, and a time for me to make you the absolute smartest person in the room as it pertains to this topic. I don't know everything, but I do know some things. And so it is my desire to really, really be a blessing. Oh, Corvette clock's just now going. I don't know if that clock is slow or not. I know what my clock over here says. So anyway, glad you're here. As always, welcome to the man cave, the manly cave, right? Welcome to hanging out with the knowledge junkie. Just always, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I'm excited about tonight because I know I'm going to tell you some things that I'm almost 100% sure that you don't know. And I'm excited about doing that. So let me just say the stuff I normally say. If you are watching this on Facebook, please like and share. If you are watching this on YouTube, the Urban Apologetics channel, not the Urban Apologetics channel, if you're watching me there, please like, share, and subscribe, all right? Really, really helps out with what we're doing. So, and just give me as many likes as you can. I'm going to skip some of that other stuff. I really, 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 really am ready to get into this tonight. It's not designed to be long, but it is designed to be thorough, to just, blow your mind. So before I do that, did I adjust the camera? Yeah, I wanted to. All right. I want to go ahead now, since I may not have time later. I want to go ahead now, and I got to mark that page, something I was reading. I want to go ahead now and give you my sources, okay? And as I've been saying, this is positive, right? So the kids can watch this. I'm trying to figure out the best place to stick these after I move them around. There we go. Maybe that'll work. We'll see. All right. Here's our first book. This was mentioned last week, so I won't go into detail on any of these. There's quotes tonight from Eric Foner. Eric Foner is my absolute favorite historian. Just couldn't wait to get my hands on this book. I suggest you do it. It's nice and thick, so that means there's lots of information in there. Donna Dickerson, absolutely loved. There's some things that she put, well, it's all good, but there's some things she said in here about when black people were given the vote that I think is just really awesome to know, what they had to go through in order to be able to do that. John Hope Franklin, there are at least 8 editions of this book. I actually have another edition. I think I have 2 more of them, but at least one more edition of this, From Slavery to Freedom. So it will talk about the Reconstruction era, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And the last one that I want to show you, I think, is the W.E.B. Du Bois book, Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880. He and I dated the same, okay? I believe that it ended in 1880, not 1877, or around that time. So just real important to get your hands on some of these materials and read this stuff for yourself. That's how you become the smartest person in the room, right? You get the receipts, you study them, and when you talk, you can talk from a position of intellect where you can say, look, I read this myself and this is what it says, and I'm convinced. It's not you trying to remember what I said, but you knowing exactly, what the story is. But I always try to make sure that I give you sources from my collection so that you can, get this stuff yourself, okay? All right, story time. We're going to definitely have a good story tonight. I just messed that up. Sorry about that. Let me fix it like this. That's what happens when you don't have dinner before you get started. You got the shakes and all of that other kind of stuff going on. So let's go back to that. All right, story time tonight. Again, it's for the kids. We are talking about, this is Black History Month. Today, we're focusing on education, okay? Focusing on education. As I talked to you about this last week, the Marcus Garvey quote, a people without the knowledge of their past history or origins and culture is like a tree without roots. You got to know where you came from. Now, one of the things that I've been doing and trying to show you, you can go to YouTube. The videos are always stagnant on YouTube. You can go there because I've done series on the origins of man, or Black origins. And that's very, very important because, we were brought to America as slaves. If you're listening to this or watching this in the United States, we were brought here as slaves. And so there's a gap in our history, things that we're not aware of. But if you understand Black biblical history, just had this conversation today. I'm going to a university, a college in Chicago to lecture next week. And after that, the very next day, I'm going to a church where I am going to the pastor and I are going to videotape a conversation about different eras of Blackness. It's this stuff is available, so you can I'm going to design it so that it is clear that even though there's a gap in Black history, what we may know about ourselves, a few generations back, there's still a piece in the Bible where you can read all the way through. The Bible is Black history. All right, so it's important to know the past. Today, we're going to deal with Reconstruction so that we can look at some of the present treasures that we have, the nuggets that are there that tell us, great things that Black folks accomplished. And I'm going to do some reading tonight. A little bit, and I've said this before, a little more than I'm used to doing. But it's going to be okay. It's a little bit outside of my comfort zone for the way I like for things to flow. But so what? It's very important for us to know about ourselves. It's very important for us to know that we are people of great strength. We're people of great strength. We come from people that endured much to get to where we are now. All right, let's dive in. 1863. The Civil War is going on, but Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, which declares that all Black people are free. Okay, and that declaration was the beginning of, the change that would occur that would bring about the and I'm getting ahead of myself, but would bring about the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. Okay, so and I'll get that in just a second. So at Appomattox, 1865, the Confederates surrender to the North, and then we have 13th Amendment says we're free, right? Slavery is unconstitutional. It's illegal. 14th Amendment, where we get the rights of full citizens. I know there's issues with all of this, but this is what the Constitution was declaring for us. That's why 1964 and 1965, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act are acts, because it was already in the Constitution. We were supposed to have these things, including the 15th Amendment, which is the vote. Now, we'll deal with, what we're going to deal with in the future is we're going to deal with politics, we'll deal with voting, we'll deal with that kind of thing, we'll deal with people, the church's involvement, we'll deal with, and then we'll move into some more modern stuff. But tonight, we want to talk about the Freedmen's Bureau. Somebody should make a movie, right, about the significance that they had in history. The war is over, it's been developed, and there's an opportunity for the Freedmen's Bureau, spin off from the military, to deal with the rights and wrongs and make sure that Black people get, fair practice of the law. And that's in every area, as long as Reconstruction lasted, okay? And what we're going to focus on tonight, which is most significant, is what they did during Reconstruction in the area of education. All right? So let me read this to get us started with some of the reading here. And then I've got something I want to show you, and we'll kind of spin off and take some things from there. All right? Do I have you? The Freedmen's Bureau from 1865 to 1872 was responsible for helping some 4 million Blacks after slavery ended. The Bureau, headed by Major Oliver O. Howard, built medical facilities, distributed over 21 million meals to both Blacks and whites. During the time of Reconstruction, I have a quote here from a book. Its greatest accomplishments were in education. More than 1,000 schools were built. More than 1,000 schools were built. Now, I was reading something recently that said it was about 2,000. But even 1,000 in the South is impressive, okay, in this short period of time. Over $400,000 was spent to establish teacher training institutions. All major black colleges were either founded by or received aid from the Bureau. Now, you need to look at $400,000 at their time to educate teachers, and I'm going to go a little deeper into that in just a moment here, to educate teachers to go into the South to teach. Let me say this in advance. These were Christian organizations that were doing this. There was something called the Benevolent Empire, which started before the Civil War. And the Benevolent Empire was these various societies, these various groups that did what was called disinterested benevolence. And what that was about was disinterested meant that what you were doing to serve others, you weren't going to benefit from it in any way. So as people in the North became Christians, they looked for an area of service through one of these many organizations. They looked for an area of service so that they could do this disinterested benevolence. And the entire thing was called the Benevolent Empire. Well, these churches and organizations were a part financially as well as people sending teachers into the South, both black and white. I'll get into more detail in just a second. Right now, we're going to take a look at this video and we'll talk on the other side.
On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, an executive order that proclaimed the freedom of enslaved African Americans in states that had seceded from the Union. Over 2 years later, the Civil War was ended, and by December of 1865, the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, abolishing slavery in the United States. Each of these steps helped nearly 4 million former slaves gain their freedom. These African Americans faced a long, difficult road to independence, and for many, it was a challenge even to find shelter and work. One of the first steps President Lincoln took to help them was urging Congress to establish the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, more commonly known as the Freedmen's Bureau, in March of 1865. The Bureau helped former slaves secure jobs by drawing up labor contracts and providing temporary housing, food, and medical care. It was also tasked with reuniting families that were separated during the Civil War. The Freedmen's Bureau legalized marriages and kept detailed records that are housed in the National Archives to this day. But perhaps its greatest achievement was in education. The Freedmen's Bureau established thousands of freedmen's schools in the South, increasing black literacy to above 30%. It also built several colleges that are known today as historically black colleges and universities, like Fisk University in Tennessee and Howard University in Washington, D.C., granting more than 1,000 college degrees to African Americans by 1872. The Freedmen's Bureau's accomplishments did not come easy. Its efforts were not supported by the majority of white Southerners, and many white Northerners were ambivalent toward its goals. After President Lincoln was assassinated, Vice President Johnson took his place. As a Southerner, Johnson had little sympathy for the former slaves. He quickly cut funding to the already unpopular program. At the same time, white people that worked for the Freedmen's Bureau often had to deal with ridicule. Even so, many Bureau workers stayed in the South, helping the Reconstruction effort by getting involved in politics, renting homes, and rebuilding their own lives and the economy as well. While the lack of funding contributed to the disbandment of the Freedmen's Bureau in 1872, its influence is noteworthy. For many African Americans, the services of the Freedmen's Bureau were a vital source of support as they created new lives and sought to claim their new freedoms.
All right. So, I'm going to do some more reading here. By the way, this is taken from a master's thesis, so, I know what I'm telling you is accurate. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts, one from W.E.B. Du Bois and the other one from Booker T. Washington, that describes for us, and this is kind of the theme of the night, what did Black people do in the area of education? What were they doing? W.E.B. Du Bois says, he revealed the eagerness of slaves to learn. This is a quote. How the freedmen yearned to learn and know. And with the guiding hand of the Freedmen's Bureau and the Northern School Marm, helped establish the public school in the South and taught his own teachers in New England College transplanted to Black South, to the Black South. What this means is these teachers are being trained. Now, they may not have completely understood what they were going to deal with, because I've got some information that shows they might not have understood that. But what I want you to see initially here is people are excited, they're preparing, and they're willing to go. Booker T. Washington, his powerful words, he's the founder of Tuskegee University, of course, and he expressed the hunger and dedication for learning among the former slaves. Few people who were not right in the midst of the scenes can form any exact idea of the intense desire which the people of my race showed for education. It was a whole race trying to go to school. Few were too young and none too old to make the attempt to learn. As fast as any kind of teachers could be secured, not only were day schools filled, but night schools as well. The greatest ambition of the older people was to try to learn to read the Bible before they died. Hungry to learn. It had been learning, reading had been suppressed for so long that they were in droves, in mass, taking advantage of the opportunity to learn to read. And in the South, with the funds of the Freedmen's Bureau, they created what was called normal schools, Normal. And the picture that you see there on your screen, the bottom two pictures, are Southern Normal School in Brewton, Alabama, where my parents were both born. And that's just the building. There's just one of the buildings. I participated in a summer program there way back in 75. My aunt worked at the school, lived right down the street from it. But these normal schools, these teaching schools, were throughout the South. And they were teacher preparing schools, preparing teachers that would go to schools throughout the South, or as you just heard, create schools, because people were hungry to learn. It didn't matter what the age was, any of that. They would fill these buildings up with people. And I'm going to talk to you in just a second. What kind of buildings? It was just everywhere. There was such a great hunger and importance. And I'm trying to find a word and I can't grab it right now. But learning was a priority. And so it's important to understand. I'll back this up in a second. The hunger for education was greater than it is now. I'm not saying people aren't being educated. Kids weren't crying about going to school. There are some situations that happened on roads when kids are trying to go to school that were negative. And the next day, those kids or other kids they wanted to be educated. It was paramount. That's the word I was looking for. It's not a hard word. I just couldn't get it. It was top shelf in importance. All right. And so people were everywhere in these schools wanting to get their education. White teachers, black teachers, establishing a complete system. All right? Let's go forward with this. Oh, I had a few other pictures I just wanted to show you. So let me do that. Education going on everywhere. All right. The tenacity of freed blacks to be educated is undeniable. There were white Northern teachers that dedicated their lives to the cause of freedmen's education, saying, "I think I shall stay here as long as I live and teach this people. I have no love or taste for any other work and am happy only here with them." Now, many of these people were dirty and unkept and all of that kind of stuff, but these folks were missionaries in their own country, wanting to help these folks learn, and the hunger and the dedication made it easy because black folks wanted to learn. It was a priority that they learn to read. The young and the old. There are stories where if the adults, as they were working in the fields during the day, that when the kids came home to do their, they'd already maybe done their homework, but the adults getting education for the first time can't really help their own children, would go over the lessons so they could learn. Everybody was going to school. Everyone wanted to learn. Eric Foner explains how children instructed parents and workers spent their lunch breaks learning to read. It was not an unusual sight to see former slaves under a variety of conditions eagerly learning to read or increase their reading skills. What is even more significant is their incredible desire to ensure that no one was left behind. Never in the history of black people has there been a more universal effort of unity than during Reconstruction. The first great mass movement of public schools at the expense of the state in the South came from Negroes. Public education for all at public expense was in the South a Negro idea. The organization of public schools, curriculum design, and people making sure that the kids are learning well, and adults learning. All this organization came, black folks. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Never has there been a time when blacks worked in tandem, together. Seemingly, each person reached back to the next person as their scholastic knowledge increased. Eric Foner, again, describes the aid provided by the Freedmen's Bureau, how in 1868 the state governments provided the majority of funding for black education. See, that's not what happened when the ghettos happened. I'm only trying to be positive here, but the ghettos were designed to put less money in the public schools so that kids would not advance. In this situation, the Freedmen's Bureau is using that money to make sure that black schools were top shelf. That hasn't happened since. Are you understanding the gravity of what I am trying to say to you, beloved? The system in those schools were designed in a better way collectively than they are now. But the initiative often lay with blacks themselves. Urban blacks took immediate steps to set up schools, sometimes holding classes temporarily in abandoned warehouses, billiard rooms, or in New York or Orleans and Savannah, Georgia, former slave markets. In rural areas, Freedmen Bureau's officials repeatedly expressed a surprise at discovering classes organized by blacks already meeting in churches and in basements and in private homes. In other words, we need an official teacher, but whatever it is we already know. We're so hungry for knowledge. We're so hungry to get this information spread to the rest of our people that we're going to go ahead and start the school anyway. We may be limited. We may only be able to take them to a second grade or third grade level. But until you send somebody that can take them higher, we're going to get started anyway. Just a hunger to know how to read, to know stuff. I mean, and there are stories, and I'll deal with this more when we get to talking about voting, that people would meet just to read the current news so that they would stay current on what was going on in politics. Right? They'd have church and then they would go someplace and they would gather together so they could learn. Well, people had to be able to read to do that. They'd spread it around, take turns reading, people bringing in different newspapers, different articles. Maybe if somebody had been traveling, bringing a newspaper from another location. Because people were hungry for knowledge. I wouldn't have been the only knowledge junkie around. I would have been surrounded by them. But see, does that story get told? Do you know that how things were? Have you ever heard how they were organized? The hunger that people had? That 1,000 black schools were built? We're going to talk about the HBCUs. I haven't even gotten to that yet. I'm not talking about the universities. I'm talking about schools for children to learn and for adults to sit in, and to get their education. Without assistance, blacks erected school buildings and raised the funds to pay qualified teachers. They cared for each other in such a way that even in schools that required tuition, poor families could enter at no cost. Oh my goodness, I should just spend the rest of our time right there. If school had tuition, other black families around made sure that Mr. Johnson's kids could go to school. Nobody's getting left behind. Nobody. Because education, I got the word now, was paramount. And your neighbor having it had just as much value to... What, every man for himself. Now this isn't a variety of states. I'm not telling you a story that happened at one school. But we don't We don't hear about that level of organization that we had. We don't hear about that level of hunger that we had, but you're hearing it tonight. To assist in the salary of a teacher, families would allow teachers to live in their homes. Well, sometimes they had to do that because even white teachers that came to town might not be able to get, in a rooming house or a hotel. They may not rent to them simply because they're there to teach black people. So they would allow them to stay in their homes. Are you with me? Let me see if I need to change the picture here. I just want to make sure you have enough variety as you're getting this. Nah, we're good. Packed in schoolhouses and other venues was one thing, but proving that actual learning was going on to skeptics was another. You ready for this? It goes with the pictures that are there. I got ahead of myself. As best as you can see, look at how the people are dressed. The South had, in part, been able to keep its systems of slavery alive by declaring that blacks were unable to learn. Slaveholders purported that slavery was a way of caring for those who were not self-sufficient. The inability for the black man to be educated was a theory that had to be disproved. Funding from the North and equal rights for blacks in large part depended on proof of their ability to function in mainstream society. At the time of this recording, I don't like to date my stuff, but at the time of this recording, there are 2 black quarterbacks that are going to face off for the first time. And it's constantly on the news. And the only reason for that is because there was a time that black folks' intelligence was questioned, which I don't really believe that. I just think there was a desire for them to not be at the helm. Same thing happened with the Tuskegee Airmen, and they end up being the best pilots of World War II. Because when we get an opportunity in any area, we excel. We give an opportunity. We got COVID-19 came around because Corbett had been working on it for 7 years. And that's where our vaccine came from. Now, even in this modern day, that's not being told as it should be. But the point is that this black woman was able to do that. We'll talk about her later. We'll get to her. But what we need to understand here is that it's being questioned. So now there's some testing that has to happen when, we're all 99.9% the same. It's just a bunch of hooey. But nevertheless, propaganda's out there, the thinking is out there, it's got to be proved. So, for the Freedmen's Bureau, teachers, missionaries, this took their job beyond competing in the education arena. They saw how fast people were learning. Etiquette had to be taught to the former slaves so they would appear more civilized to the northern observers coming south for evidence of program success. Now, these are the people that are going to keep funding what's going on. The successful schools and all that they're building. So they need to present to them that it's not they're gathering people in a building, but that they have the ability to learn something. And this is a quote. But the critical question, as every educator understood, came down to a comparison of their pupils to white students in the North, both in the rapidity with which they acquired basic skills and their demonstrated aptitude in more advanced subjects. So we need to make sure that, they get the information, they consume it, and they can repeat it. It's there. It's not surface learning, but it's in deep memory. We need to make sure they can demonstrate aptitude, and even in advanced subjects, right? College prep courses, they can do well. They wouldn't have called it that back then, but that's what this means. Few needed to be reminded that the manner in which they decided this issue went to the very heart of their efforts. Indeed, to the legitimacy of the experiment itself. So it's an experiment. We're going to send money for a while, but if these black kids aren't learning, we're not going to continue to fund this. So they make sure that they look good and that they can show their intelligence. Nearly every teacher and supervisor made the inevitable comparison, some with greater detail than others. The clear consensus was that the black pupils, learned as rapidly as the average white child in northern schools. Everyone wasn't elated with this news. Those southern people, right, that wanted to say black people couldn't learn. They wanted to say black people couldn't be quarterbacks. They wanted to say black people couldn't be pilots. They wanted to say black people couldn't be supervisors. They wanted to say black people couldn't be inventors. This shot all of that down. Because the answer is, it doesn't matter who you are. You have the ability to learn just like anybody else. Nobody is smarter. Nobody is better. And if you find that you've been in an educational situation where you are a little bit behind, you can catch up. If the information is available, and it is, you can catch up. All right, this is a little different tonight. I used to reading like this, but I just figured it was the best way to get this knowledge recorded for you. Black history, it's a beautiful thing. A lot of great nuggets and treasures, as I said in the beginning, that are available to us to know, that are encouraging, that people that look like us right after slavery, at a time when it shouldn't have been easy, and it wasn't easy, but there should have been all of these other obstacles that prevented them that we don't have now. The schools in the South were better than the schools in the North. Built schools, raised money, self-sufficient in many ways, created a system of education. Black people have always been great. And no matter what has happened to us, we always end up shining. This isn't just about Black History Month. Beloved, it's about knowing who you are every month, every day, every hour, being confident that all things in Jesus are possible. I'm Pastor Jackie Jackson. That's my message for tonight.